Previously, the group easily destroyed the slime they knew was hidden in the water. Then they studied a hidden door that Tornak had noticed, trying to figure out how to get through it. Sean eventually noticed that it was connected to a chain, and when Keelan followed it underwater, he saw that it was tied to the grate they had opened to get through to that section of the sewers. He closed the grate and swam through another tunnel that he'd previously noticed to get back to the others. As soon as the grate closed, the hidden door opened and revealed an alchemy room. Taria and Keelan gathered up some explosive salts and resins to experiment with in the future before they moved on to the last section of the sewer. 2 cannons were set up to blast anyone who came through the doorway, but Tornak was able to put up a fog cloud so that he and Taria could slip in. Taria shoved her cannon into the water, where it was pulled into a pipe, but Tornak simply turned his towards the wall in an attempt to be able to take it with them later. Then they headed into the next room, where they could all feel a very powerful shadow spawn. It was a beholder. Because, of course, it was. Its anti-magic field made a mess of things, and its death ray kept coming up, although luckily nobody died from it. The fight very much wasn't going in the group's favor, especially once Oz was charmed and essentially dropped out of it. Then Tornak blasted the beholder with a lightning bolt at full power, which marked the beginning of the tide turning. The others had been chipping away at it previously, but that was enough to bloody it. It then attacked Tornak, starting to turn him to stone, and brought Zaya up directly in front of it after she tried to trick it but failed. Seeing that, Oz, despite still being charmed, was able to start the ritual as it sent the shadow spawn back to their home plane and wasn't technically an attack against it. Sean called out the next part, and then Keelan, after one last attack against it, did the last. To the shock of everyone, despite it barely being bloodied, the ritual worked. One might say it was almost a nat 20 kind of roll. The beholder disappeared, and a blast of familiar energy made everyone feel significantly better than they had just moments earlier. The group finished attaching wires to the various explosive barrels throughout the room. Then several of them noticed that there were hidden bookshelves along the top of the room full of books that dated back a century and a half. They were full of all sorts of forbidden and forgotten topics that had disappeared during the war that led to magic being banned. The group quickly gathered them all up to take with them. They weren't able to move the cannon and take the books as well, so they shoved the cannon into the water, where it was sucked up by the same pipe as the other. Keelan had previously sent an alligator through it, so he knew where it led out, and the hope was they could pick up the cannons later. When they left the sewer, everyone was gathered at the wall, and it was clear the attack was imminent. One of the soldiers took the wiring from them to prepare to set off the explosion when the time was right. The group quickly got instructions on where to find the orphanage they'd read about on the Wyvern's Claws job board, and hurried to get the kids out of the city. They made their way to the ships, with Taria and Tornak taking the Karma, while everyone else took the smaller, faster ship with the children on board. They got them to the other side of the river and dropped them off. On the way over, Taria completely dumped out the entirety of the bag of holding in the hold of the Karma, including a dark tier and a number of explosives, which certainly won't lead to anything bad happening in the future. Once the orphans were off the ship, Tornak put the Karma back in the bottle, which drew a lot of attention. Zaya then set off fireworks of magic while shouting out "Magic for all," and Taria wrote those words in the sky. All around them on the eastern side of the river, various people started casting other smaller magic. Sean, on the other hand, fought off a small panic attack, as there was no doubt at all that her ties to a group that was blatantly using magic was going to come out. Across the river, Fluvadara went up in a fiery explosion, and the remaining rebel fighters pushed to attack the enemies who hadn't been killed outright by the Feint. The group headed to catch up with the fleet, speeding to catch up with the flagship. The captain was thrilled to see Keelan, and he was even more excited when Keelan told him about the secret route he'd been told about that would get the smaller ships of the fleet around the blockade. Keelan and Zaya, who traveled over with him, were given a flag of Leviathan, the sign of House Blacktide, and asked to lead the smaller ships of the fleet. The plan was that they'd take the secret route and hit the blockade from the side, hopefully without warning. The group put up the flag, and the other smaller ships peeled off to follow them once the flagship put up the appropriate flags as instructions. The group made a quick decision to name the smaller ship Serendipity, since it didn't seem appropriate to be leading a fleet without the ship having some sort of name. Zaya got some cannons from one of the other ships following them, and the group worked to get them set up for use. She also tried to get as much gossip as she could, considering the circumstances. Eventually, the smaller fleet the group was leading arrived at the canal Keelan had been told about and prepared to head into it. And that is where we left off.